Here's the weekly roundup for Bitcoin for the week of January 10th, where we opened up the week at about $98,000, saw as high as 102,000 once again, and then as low as 91,000. Currently sitting at around 94 to 95K as we end the week here on a Friday. Granted, now the crypto market does not close, as we all know, until Sunday evening at 7 p.m. Eastern. And in reality, it really never closes. That is just when the day is considered to end, and then it immediately open right after. I want to cover basically the price action as it unfolded this week, a couple of ways we could have been, viewing it, and then, taking a peek at what I anticipate will be coming soon. As we enter next week, the key levels, etc. So let's jump right on into it. Before we jump into the Bitcoin price action, I want to thank this video sponsor once again, myself. If you're interested in joining the CVO Trading Discord, where I post all of my setups, analysis, outlooks, ideas, I have short-term TA for basically daily setups and short-term movements, not to get too jumbled up with the longer-term, mid to long-term plays. I've got a long-term area where I'm putting up basically Bitcoin, Ethereum, several dozen altcoins. I take requests from members, put it in there as well. I've even added this new high-risk, low cap area, which is just that. It's high risk, it's low cap. These things could go to zero. Haven't put anything in there quite yet, but I do have a little list I'm working on that I will be putting in there as time progresses here. I've got the CVO Academy that covers all the resources and everything that I use daily to create these videos, and then I have exclusive member-only market updates. These few channels just for myself, post only. There's no noise in between, no comments, drowning anything out. It's just myself. And then you also have 3 areas for the community chat room. Everybody can post their own charts, ideas. And it's just pretty much a really engaging where I'll put all my updates analysis here pretty much 24/7. And if you'd like to access that, you can do so for 7 days, absolutely risk-free, with the link in my bio or description below. It'll take you to this website where you can click on get access right here. And it will show that there is a 7-day free trial. So once you put in your information, you will not be charged. You will have 7 days completely risk-free. If you decide it's not for you by the 7th day, cancel before you're charged. So we started off the week around this region right here, about $98,000, which at the time was at that point, our previous week high, right? We put in a high on Friday, kind of ranged around in that region, started off Monday, essentially just kind of taking over that, area with a little support resistance flip, holding as support, and looking for a next move higher. Now in the Discord, once again, this was that same time frame on Monday the 6th, 8:30 in the morning. I said that we had a new range here, currently above the previous week high. As long as we're above that, I target the levels above, lose the previous week high for the 2 new weekly targets below, right? So in here, I showcased that we had a new previous week range. We had a region that we were looking for as a key level, which was that previous week high, about 98K, saying as long as we held above that, we were looking for the higher areas, which is 101 to 104. Losing the previous week high, we'd be looking down to our week pivot. We had a weekly naked point of control, and we also had just the overall range, which is likely that, if we were to come back into this region, you have to anticipate that we're likely to rotate that range, meaning as we're coming into it from the high, that we would, basically rotate to the low. Vice versa, if we were coming into a range from the bottom, you'd rotate it back to the high. Previous week low, basically sitting at the bottom of the range, the bottom of the value area, so on. Noted that personally, I feel we'll continue up a bit, and that the previous high was going to be key. We then did get a move to the upside here, basically middle of the day on Monday, and pretty much just closed up around this region here, right in this area here. If you were to take a simple Fibonacci retracement from that high to the current low that we put in on this area over here, and we'll go ahead and slide that right over, we could see that we came right into the gold pocket. So the 0.618 to the 0.65 Fibonacci retracement, very common area to see a retracement before either continuation back down, or on the flip side, continuation up if we were coming down for a correction. So with that being said, we were also looking at this in the sense of a monthly range, right? So since we started January, we now had the month of December as far as a range to work off of. So this is like a lot of data that's kind of compounding, but generally it does tend to, kind of work together pretty well. And as we basically started off January, this was a big key right here, looking to get back in that range. We were looking to rotate it. So not only are we looking at previous week data, we're looking at the previous month as well. And for this instance, we had the previous month range high. So the range for December of 2024, the gold pocket of this region coming in here as well. And not only did we, kind of leave our targets for the week, that weekly pivot, that weekly naked point of control down below us, we just had to be really cautious as we came into this area. Personally, I did think we would see a push a little bit higher towards that 104 at the time. But when we came up to this area here, this little wick was very telling, right? So when you look at things a little bit more locally, I'm going to go ahead and zoom this in here, right? So at the time, once again, this is Monday, we close, Tuesday opens. And one of the best trades that, I constantly am looking for is a sweep of the previous day or the previous week, previous month, any high, any low, really. But generally, we see these time and time again on the lower time frames where you put in these highs, right? Maybe some people were coming in for a short right at this gold pocket. Maybe they had preset for a short, right? Because a lot of times people will do that as well with the stop loss just above the high. And then this little wick right above kind of stops everybody out for one. And for two, breakout traders are going to look at this as, all right, we're actually going to continue higher. I doubt 104 was probably on the radar for most people, but the all-time high would have been the next key area, right? One thing I try to note and put these updates in the Discord every single day as well is the previous day range, or in this case, it was our Monday range, which is a really key region to kind of keep note of for the week. And what we did here was just that, right? We had our Monday high. We came up, we swept that Monday high, which gave us at least a run to the bottom of that range and the Monday low, right? And then from there, if we lost the Monday low, now we know we got the previous week range to look to. And then those other targets kind of all came into play. So in this instance, we essentially started off the week. We claimed the previous week high, which meant that, no lower levels at the moment. At the time, we were looking higher. Okay. And this is how you can manage this stuff as we go, right? You don't want to get too overly predicty with the market, because the market can very much change. And really, it does come down to just losing and claiming levels to where things do change, right? So in the short term. So previous week highs claimed, you run it up to a gold pocket, rotated that December range. We had a local, sweep of the high, which would have been the entry trigger for a short to at least your Monday low, which realistically, came back here to this previous week high, essentially. And then once we lost the previous week high, well, now all this is on the table, okay? And it took a little bit of time, pretty much the entire week to get there. But you can see how we just slowly came back and we backfilled. Weekly pivot, which is the average of price of last week, which is this week's target, is the main one. We had a naked point of control from last week, which is the second. And then overall, rotate the entire range and the previous week low, which is right here as well. And I note that because just as we took the high up here on a Monday high, right, you swept the day before, kind of stopping out this little bit of traders right here, coming all the way back down to this level right here, even though we just barely took it, you just now knocked out everybody for this whole region of the chart, the whole last week, anyone that was getting into long positions, because once again, nobody's getting in right at these lows, right? They're waiting until the price kind of recovers, shows a little bit of, upside before they're feeling like, all right, I'm comfortable, it's reversing, I'm going to get in, my stop loss below the low, or people will move their stop losses up from lower. All right. So that is a big liquidity grab at the end of the day that we see time and time again. She's actually been putting in the same setup for the last several weeks right here, right? So this huge wick down right here, this was to take out the previous week, right? So this was on the 5th of December, the week before that, right? That was the previous week low right here. So you came down, you stopped out everybody right there, continued on up, came down again right here and right here. So this was actually 2 weeks of lows right here, barely came down, just kind of kept us in right here. This last one on the 30th of December came down and effectively took out those previous week lows, and once again just runs it back. So this is all short-term stuff that's just really just jacking around anyone in the market with leverage, right? So for anyone in the market with spot positions and things like that, obviously, you're always in constant, not fear necessarily, but you're always in a constant state of understanding or paying attention to the market, knowing, okay, is it going to start crashing or is it going to start pumping, whatever. Most people aren't just casually getting stopped out of their spot positions, right? So this is all leverage plays at this point, where you get these huge moves back and forth. And so at the moment, earlier or last week on the 30th, we did it. We shot up to this, major level. Like I said, for me personally, I still thought we'd push up a little bit higher. But locally, we had to be aware of that little setup right here. Personally, once again, I did not catch this short. Usually I do. That's usually I'm usually all over that. I just unfortunately actually didn't get to update the chart until a little later in the morning. And the move had already essentially happened. So, but that is a setup I generally will put out there for everybody. But once I did note it, I put in there that we were probably going to rotate the range, and so lo and behold, that's what we got, right? So, what is next for Bitcoin? Well, it's the end of the week. It's Friday, so next week now we will be, pretty much under the same risk of just coming down and sweeping that low once again, and maybe we get a run to the upside here. Personally, I see one of two options here, and it pretty much is the case of moving down to our high time frame averages down here. So these are December, not so much necessarily. More so, I'm focused on this 86,881, which is a average of last quarter, which is likely to be met this quarter. Thing is, we don't have to hit it right away, right? We could very well still see more upside before we come back to that, which is essentially what we did here, on a lower term, where we had our weekly pivot for this week. This was a target for the week, average of last week. We went up before we came down to it. Okay. So this quarterly, which is a target in an area, maybe I shouldn't even use the word target because it's not like it's the end all be all, but this is a level that I imagine we come down to with high probability within the first quarter, right? So quarter one at some point, whether it's now, next week, or we come up to some degree and then we come back down, right? So that's kind of the next major play, in my opinion, on Bitcoin, is that we will probably make our way to this 86,881 at some point. But more locally, when we just came down and we put in this low once again. So looking at this, you got a high here, we've got a low here, you got this, kind of midpoint, and then you've got this low that just took out the low. And anytime that we have this pretty much gold pocket retracement at that, and then you come and you sweep the low and you kind of get this retracement here, I start looking for a harmonic. Okay. Now, once again, this is something that may not play out. I don't know which way Bitcoin is going to go, unfortunately, right? Any more than anybody else does, right? I just am building up an edge on the market to position myself as well as I see fit according to probabilities and statistics. And from this point here, I could see, I know two things, right? Basically the next best buy, if I'm going to look for a long even, or, maybe a buy as far as mid to long-term play, but I just truly don't think that buying Bitcoin at these levels, at least for the long haul, is the play. Even if we were to see, 100% move out of here, right? The more probable thing to me is that we actually see a sizable correction first, and then we get a move up. And whether or not that is true is yet to be seen, obviously. But for me, as far as my risk management would go, buying an $80,000 and $90,000 Bitcoin is not the play, right? So especially when we're at highs at that. So take that for what it's worth. If that's in your risk management profile, and by all means, do what you got to do. But for me, I'm looking at this a little bit more locally, and looking for next week, depending on how things go. And really, I think it'll take about 2 weeks to get there. But I am looking for a potential shark to play out here, right? And this is a pattern that essentially drives off of taking the low, and then you come up and you take the high. All right. So once again, looking at this just in the shorter, like previous weeks and last month, and just the overall range as a whole, a lot of people would have been stopped out or fearful around this area. And maybe there's still reason to be fearful. Maybe we roll over and we run down to 86K, right? And I just want to point out, this is like, 8 to 10%. It's nothing crazy. And I do think that we would get at least a sizable bounce from this level here, whether it's, back to all-time highs or at least up to the 104. But I do think that would offer up a really good bounce, right? And essentially that would be the king of liquidity sweeps, right? For this whole time frame, we've been in this range, essentially, you could call it since November. Come back, come down to these areas, stop out all this, right? And then you get at least a pretty good move to the upside, maybe even new all-time highs, and see how it goes. But for me, I'm looking at this potentially as this shark pattern. So we'll see how it plays out. I'll be updating obviously throughout in Discord along the way. I do want to note that this is a sizably bearish pattern, that, we saw a similar setup last year at 72K Bitcoin before we dropped to 48. So just something to point out there. However, like I said, right now it's literally a nothing burger. This is just something I'm preparing myself for, so that I'm not scrambling when price gets to this region. If we start to see some reactions, rejections, losing some levels, I'm not going to just be thinking, oh, we just broke the all-time high again, buy more here kind of thing. Like for me, I'd be looking at this quite opposite and seeing this as a potential top, and that we'd see at least a move from there down to this 87, 86K, which would be sizable, right? If we saw that kind of a move, you're talking 30% depending, which, let's just put it into perspective. These last few drops here, which have destroyed the market short term, both 15%. So, even if it's just another one of those, just something I'd be prepared for, right? So what I mean by that is that this is not a place where I'd be buying by any means. So that's how I'm viewing Bitcoin going into next week. And like I said, I'll be updating this pretty heavily in the Discord. I'll be putting up my next week, assumptions and analysis with the new previous week range data on Sunday, and a couple things over the weekend as well. I just put up 20 plus altcoin setups for the mid to long term plays, right? Areas where I'm looking for buy-ins, especially if we see a pullback in the market, and then major high time frame targets, right? These are for the people that don't have all day to sit around at the computer, not interested in the short-term day-to-day stuff, but in the longer term, macro targets, things like that, macro areas of interest for buys. And that is, a list of a ton of things, really. Like you got Aerodrome, Phantom, Zill, Ondo, Whiff, just pretty much a bunch of things here. So AIOZ, eGold, True, Virtuals, Jasmy, INJ, Bello, GRT, Bitcoin Cash, XNO, Ape, PYTH, XTZ. I mean, there's a ton. And this is just a normal round for me, basically, that I do pretty much every week. So once again, if you're interested in joining and getting these updates in a more timely manner and basically 24/7, especially over the nights, weekends, and holidays, be sure to join in the link below. Like I said, once you hit get access, it's already there. There's no promo code or anything. You get 7 days completely free. Try it out. If it's not for you, no hard feelings. Otherwise, I thank you all so much for watching. I thank anybody that's a member for being a member. Thank you all for being viewers and followers. And I hope you all have a great weekend. I look forward to seeing you all in the next video. Cheers to another amazing week. Enjoy your weekend. Till next time, everybody.